name's Dillon Morrison, director on the product team at Sigma. Sigma Computing is a modern data platform for BI, for data apps, for embedded analytics, and for AI as well now. And today I'm going to be talking to you about basically how to build effective AI interfaces for analytics. And specifically, I'm going to be talking through kind of the journey we've gone on at Sigma to build our AI interface. And hopefully a lot of the mistakes and learnings we've made along the way are generalizable enough that you guys can take them back to your companies, or as you're developing products or features, these learnings can be helpful for you as well. Awesome. So before getting into some of the actual UI here, let's talk about why Sigma, or more generally, why is BI the right place to inject AI for analytics? The first and most obvious reason is that your BI tool is already the glue between your users and your organization's data. It's already where people are going to consume data, so it just makes a lot of sense to infuse that with AI to help power those analytics. Second is that your BI tool actually knows a lot of the semantics about your business and your data already. So it already knows how to take your sort of complicated data structures and schemas and map those to your key business concepts and your important KPIs. Next is metadata. So BI tools, more than probably any other tool in the stack, really know what your users are trying to do every day. And that's because your BI tools have better metadata than any other tool in the stack. It knows who your users are, what kind of data they're looking at, what data sources they're looking at, how often they're looking at them, what your colleagues or people that look like you within an organization are, what kind of data they're looking at frequently. So we have all this really awesome, great metadata, and especially when you combine that with the semantics, you have your complicated data structures, your semantics map that data to your key business concepts and KPIs, and then metadata knows how much those key concepts and KPIs are actually getting used. Together, these things can create a really powerful feedback loop to make a really intelligent system. And the last reason is just governance. So your BI tool, assuming it's enterprise grade, already has security, already has permissions, already has data access controls with things like row level security, column level security, table restrictions, all that sort of good stuff. No reason you should have to duplicate that logic anywhere else. You don't need to spin up another AI specific app just for this stuff. You might as well just leverage all your existing data infrastructure. So for those reasons, we very much believe that BI is the right tip of the spear for having your workforce adopt AI. So in 2023, AI has its ChatGPT moment, and because of all these reasons that I just mentioned, every BI tool has like a really cool opportunity to build really exciting and new and powerful interfaces. And we thought we'd see a lot of really cool innovation on the interface layer around how do you want to interact with your data. But that's not what everyone does. Almost immediately, everyone kind of races to just build these text-to-SQL bots, right? And there's like probably 40 or 50 companies that popped up in the last 2 years that just do specifically this. And for most of these tools, it's great. It's going to help your data analysts, your SQL analysts. It's going to help them write SQL a lot faster. It's going to be more performant SQL. It's going to be less verbose SQL. But that's really not the transformational change that we all wanted with AI, right? Like that's not at all realizing the vision that we hope to realize with AI. And this is what most of those interfaces look like. At least this is what our interface looked like at Sigma when we first tried something like this. It's just a blank page, has a search bar in the middle, and it says, ask me anything. And I can almost guarantee, this was definitely our experience, when you put this in front of users, the first thing they're going to think to themselves is, like, I have no idea what the hell to ask this thing. And then, after mulling it over for a little bit longer, they'll start to think, whoa, this is like AI, this is supposed to be super powerful and magic, like I should be able to ask it these really cool, ambitious questions. So they might ask it something like, what's the most important data I can be looking at today? Or which part of our business is the most successful or driving the most growth right now? But text-to-SQL, just SQL queries, aren't going to be able to answer those kinds of questions for you. So when people ask those questions, they tend to just fall over. And instead, after asking something pretty ambitious, people will tend to get a lot less ambitious and just think, okay, what's a question I can ask this AI that it will probably be able to answer for me? So they'll ask it something like, how are sales going? And it's a totally fair question, something you would want to know about your business. But most of these text-to-SQL interfaces are going to fall over if you ask it a question like this. And that's just because sales is too ambiguous of a term. I'm sure all of you are familiar with this concept. I was talking with a customer a few weeks ago that had 4 different ways they defined revenue. Like the RevOps team knew all of them, and they were great, they were all necessary, but none of the end users could make heads or tails of any of that stuff. So you ask the AI a question like how sales are going, and it wouldn't know necessarily which of those definitions to pull from. So instead, you end up having to ask a pretty specific question using some pretty precise terminology. You'll end up asking it something like, how has net revenue changed over the last 3 years? And so, the promise of AI on your data is that you can ask it anything and get these really cool, exciting answers, and you don't have to deal with the drudgery of data cleansing and semantics and all this stuff anymore. You just have this magic interface to ask it whatever questions you want, and it's going to have the perfect data, and it's going to give you that answer. And that's just not at all the case. Instead, the reality is you often have to ask it some very specific question using some very precise terminology, and you've probably had to go predefine that metric in some semantic layer somewhere anyway. So it's, again, this is helpful for folks that are just writing SQL, but it's not making data accessible to everyone, which is the purpose of BI. And it's definitely, again, not recognizing this like transformational change that we all were hoping to get out of AI. So let's just say we do ask it this question though. How has net revenue changed over the last 3 years? This is usually what these interfaces will give you. Like a few data points or maybe a chart, and then just the SQL block that was used to get those results. And first off, if you don't know SQL, which again, the purpose of BI is to make data accessible to folks that don't know SQL at sort of its base layer. And if you don't know SQL, this starts to get indecipherable really quickly, right? Like as an end user, how do I know if this is pulling from the right data source? How do I know if this calculation or this metric was calculated correctly? How do I know that this AI bot remembered to filter out our closed lost opportunities, or to add in all of the revenue from that new SKU and that new custom object that we just introduced into your schema? It's really difficult to know if the AI is accurately capturing all the business context that you know as the user. And then, even if these answers are correct, like let's say you do know SQL and you see that this is the correct statement, well then you're just kind of hit with those 3 data points. In this case, we're showing 13, 14, and 13 million over the last 3 years. And great, but really also not that helpful. Like, I don't really have any context around this. Are these good numbers? Is 13 million good, or is that bad? Should it be a lot higher? Should it be a lot lower? How does it relate back to profit? How does it relate back to what our projections were? That original question you had, how are sales going, is not at all answered by just these specific data points. So again, at Sigma, we also built kind of a text-to-SQL sort of bot at first go, because why not? Like AI came out, let's hack this together real quick. But as we were showing this to our users, as we were talking to our customers, very quickly realized that this was not going to be the right paradigm. This is not the right interface to introduce to users to really capitalize on the potential that AI brings to the table here. And so just again, to quickly sort of summarize, these are the main reasons that text-to-SQL just isn't going to work. You have to specify very exact metrics using some very specific terminology. You probably have to know that terminology in advance, which, again, not really taking the full advantage of AI. it doesn't give you the context that you need around the data that gets pulled. And then lastly, unless you know SQL, you really can't validate the results or understand the logic that's going into this calculation. Cool. So how are we approaching it differently? After this initial attempt with Text-to-SQL, what did we learn? How did we go about making our interface for our users better? Well, we tried to think through the entire sort of process holistically. Like, what do humans do when they go do any data analysis today? And that very much isn't just isolated queries, just single questions and answers. Humans go through, when you take a step back and think about it, they really go through this whole analytical process. And so, what do I mean by analytical process? Well, like, think about the last time that any of you were doing any analysis and you had a net new question to ask. Something you hadn't asked before, something that wasn't on a dashboard. As a product manager, I have these kinds of questions all the time. We launch new features. I haven't asked, how often is that feature being used yet? So you have lots of net new questions all the time. And when you do have those net new questions, do you ever go to your data set and get a perfect answer on the first try? Almost certainly no, or it's really, really rare, right? It's really rare that you have the perfect data set already curated to answer that net new question that you have. And it's sort of just like a thought experiment here. If you think about if you did have perfect data, like perfect information on the entire world, then theoretically you could ask it anything, right? You could ask it like, what features should I be investing in today to help generate the most ARR next year? Or what kind of business should I be starting right now that's going to be the next billion-dollar company? Or if you go ask 10 strangers on the street, are they going to prefer my product or my competitor's product? If you had perfect data, perfect information, you'd be able to ask all these kinds of questions. But obviously, that data doesn't exist. There's no such thing as perfect data. And so I say that as a thought experiment, but this is also pretty applicable to a lot of your business as well. Like, you really don't have perfect data to answer lots of questions that you have about your business. This is true for things like measuring your user behavior when they're in your tool. Like, sure, you have sessions, you have event streams, you have all this great stuff, but it's really still hard to figure out some just base level things you want to know about your users. It really takes a lot of back and forth with the data. And so because you don't have perfect data, this is really what the data analysis process looks like in practice. It's like you want to know something, you go see what data you have to answer that. You kind of take that data, you marry it with the business context in your head, the question you're trying to answer, and you figure out, what kinds of questions can I ask of this data? You go back to the data, you'll ask it those questions, you'll get some more info. That info usually begets more questions, and you kind of go, so on and so forth on this back and forth until you land at what is the closest approximation to an answer as you can get. And this back and forth is actually really, really important. A lot of times, the best answers that you'll get are to questions that you really didn't even know to ask at the outset. So this is the kind of process that humans go through today. If you think about it, this is almost certainly what you guys have all done in the past. If you are not an analyst and you have analysts at your company, this is what they're doing today. They know their data the best. They know the business context, so they know what kinds of questions they can ask of the data. So what we wanted to do was take a look at this human process, try to distill down what are the core elements that make this process work, and how can we architect some functionality that really closely replicates this process and just sort of augments it, makes it a lot faster and better with AI. So we came up with these 4 principles. These are the 4 principles that we think really make that human data analysis process work. The first is discovery. So you want your users to know what kinds of questions they can ask of your data. So you want to start with an interface that does show them data and gets them curious. You don't want them to be just hit with a blank screen that's really intimidating and they have no idea what they can start to ask it. And humans are generally very curious. Data, I think, not just to all of us, but to most people, is generally very interesting. And we can give them the right interfaces to show them some data and let them click through it and find more information. People tend to go down that path. So you want to start with something very discoverable. Next, you want transparency. So you want to know exactly how something was calculated. You want to know the entire chain of thought the AI has gone through in order to produce an answer for you. So with Sigma in developing our AI interface, we wanted to show you, we show you every step of the process, and we are also only doing things that you yourself could do as a human. We're just having the AI do it for you. Next is control. So at any point, we want to let you take the driver's seat, and start to control sort of what the next steps the AI is going to go through. Lastly, we want to give users a path forward. So you want to give them lots of off-ramps. With Sigma, as I'll show in a minute here, at any point throughout the chain of thought the AI is going through will allow you to take any of the outputs and port them into different interfaces, be it like a dashboard or a pivot table, or in Sigma's case, we have a very spreadsheet forward UX. So if you wanted to do analysis just in a spreadsheet, you can take all of the results from the AI at any given time, drop it into a new interface to cut and slice and do all this other freeform stuff that you want to do. So yeah, we want to give them the ability for these off-ramps. We also want to give them basically sort of an endless path forward within the AI interface itself. Let people sort of click around and just keep learning more. There's always more to learn. Awesome. So this is what we are building. And I was really hoping to just do live demo today, but we are still very much actively developing a lot of this stuff right now. And our sort of discovery interface, what we're showing in the middle right here, is not quite demo ready yet. I was really hoping it would be today. So I do have to give you like 2 slidewares for that first principle discovery, but then I can get into a live demo for the rest of the 3 principles. But yeah, this is what we're building. So you open our AI interface, which we just call Ask Sigma, which is very creative. And you'll see that you're immediately hit with a bunch of data and insights. And this data, again, is based on usage metadata that we've been collecting since you started using the tool. So we know what colleagues on your team are looking at. We know what people that generally behave like you in the tool like to look at. So we're going to have a pretty good idea of the types of information, the type of data we want to show you up front when you log in. So you'll see in this case, this is all fake data, obviously. But DoorDash is one of Sigma's larger customers. And so what a DoorDash user might see when they log in is on the left-hand side, a bunch of questions that other colleagues have asked of this data previously. And then in the center here, you'll see that we just have a bunch of data organized into various topics or categories. And so all of this, again, I mentioned like the blank interface being really intimidating. You want your users to know what kinds of questions they can ask, so they don't just sit there wondering like, what should I be asking of this data? So by letting them see, what other people have asked previously and giving them some of these broader topics other folks have found interesting, our users should have a pretty good idea of what kinds of questions they can ask. Cool. So if I were to click into one of these, let's just say I were to click into that central user and employee information sort of topic. What you'd see next is a deeper dive on that data. So on the right-hand side, you'll see all the stuff that you would sort of typically expect to see. What are the top data sources related to this topic? What are the top dashboards related to this topic? Who are the top users of these data sources or these workbooks? We actually think that users are really, really important in this entire process. We don't think AI is a replacement for people by any means. And we think that by showing you the top users of things, that actually gives you a lot of really helpful context. If you see that your boss or your colleagues or other folks on your team are all looking at these same data sets or dashboards very frequently, that's a pretty good signal to you guys that that's probably some pretty important data that you should be looking at. So throughout this entire interface, this entire workflow, we try to inject user information as much as possible. You'll see that again on the left-hand side where we have questions previous users have asked about this topic. In the center, we give you sort of the top KPIs related to this topic and then the most common breakdowns of those KPIs. Those are all machine generated and then based on query metadata, like usage metadata. Keep coming back to that because it's so important in making all this stuff really smart. And then in the bottom, we have user-generated insights. And so what that is we basically go into all of the top dashboards here and we pull out the individual elements or tiles that we think are really valuable, and we'll surface those to you in this interface. So that is the discovery piece of it. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and do a quick live demo here. And again, I disabled that discovery sort of interface in the middle here. It just wasn't quite ready to demo. But we'll ask it a general question like, we have a e-commerce, like a fake e-commerce data set. The company is called Plugs Electronics. So I'm just going to ask it like, who are Plugs' best customers? We'll hit enter, and then we'll show you sort of the second, third, and fourth principles being applied here. Again, the transparency, the control, and the path forward. So if you're not familiar with Sigma, this is what our main table looks like. Usually you open it up in a spreadsheet and you can start to do some analysis. But in this case, the AI is telling us, hey, this is the right table we think you should be using to answer this question. You could go up at any point and change it. Oh, that went super fast. At any point, you could go up and say, hey, actually, I want you to use a different data source here. So that's how we're showing you the control. And then again, we're showing you the entire chain of thought here. So you have the table first. This is the source that we want to use to answer your question. Do you guys see this all right? Let me try to zoom in a little bit. So we'll show you, here's the table that we think you should use. Here's the column that we're using to answer it, customer name. So we're grouping by customer name. This is exactly what you do in Sigma's normal interface to ask this question. You would go group by your customer name. And then we will show you how we are interpreting what best means. In this case, best customers we're taking to mean total revenue. So by revenue, who are our best customers? You can always change that and tell Sigma to use something else to measure your best customers, which I'll show you guys in just a second here. We asked for the top ones, so it's going to take that table and just filter to the top 5, and then it's going to give us those top 5 customers. So in this case, it's giving us a bar chart and then a ton of additional breakdowns of that data. So for these top customers, what product types are they buying? What product families? What stores? What regions? And what quantity of goods are they buying at a time? And we'll use basically the most used dimensions in this table to help give you these breakdowns. And this gets users really thinking about what kinds of additional questions they can ask. Again, going to that back and forth, we're really helping kind of prompt people on what is the next step question you can ask of this data. And this is really important. I can't emphasize enough how much easier it is to react to stuff than it is to create stuff. I don't think I would have to explain that to anyone here, but like think about any time you're writing a paper versus editing a paper. Like obviously editing is just so much easier. It's just so much easier for humans to react to stuff. So just give them some stuff and let them react and let them get curious and start clicking through. So to show you the control piece though, let's just say that instead of revenue, what I meant by best customer is who's our most profitable. I could just come in here and either use natural language here, or I could just come update the formula itself, but I'll use natural language because it's a little bit cooler. And we'll hit enter here, and we'll see how it does. But it should hopefully understand what profit is. Awesome, yeah, and it did. So price minus cost times quantity. So it now understands what profit is. So this is going back to that control principle. At any point throughout this chain, you can go into anywhere in the interface and tell it what to do differently. Like, here's the right metric to use, or here's the right key to use. And then as soon as you do that, all of your analysis downstream will update as well. So now you see we're pulling profit. Again, you can open this in a new interface. Speaking to that sort of off-ramp point I was mentioning earlier. So this is sort of Sigma's standard workbook interface. And from here, users can take any of the tables that we were just showing and start to build visualizations or pivot tables or cut and slice however they want to, add these things to dashboards, all that sort of good stuff. And I swear this is just the internet. Usually the app's a lot faster than this. All right, I'll open that back up in a second. But you'll see we have these breakdowns. If I want to just keep clicking through, like say I want to see within our arts and entertainment product type, I can click in there. This is going to filter, so it's going to be, as soon as I click on arts and entertainment, it's like an and filter underneath it. So now we're seeing by our best customers, by product type, what stores are they coming from, what regions are these customers existing in, how much are they buying, tons of additional breakdowns here as well. And you could sort of just continue on this path if you wanted to, if I wanted to just look at this store city. So starting from our best users, getting into the types of products they're buying, and then getting into where they're buying them. So you're just continuing to go down this very guided path of analysis. All right, and again, at any point, off-ramps, you can load this data into a workbook. From here, you can make visualizations, all the same sort of stuff you'd usually expect out of a BI tool here. Let's see. So this will make a nice, pretty visualization. Oh, there we go. All right, and then lastly, at any point, you can always get down to, row level detail. We're working on top of a live warehouse. These are all SQL queries that are being compiled on the back end and issued to the warehouse. So at any point, you can get down to the row level detail and see, what is everything that Valerie Jackson bought at this store in the arts and entertainment product category. Looks like she's bought a lot of stuff. Cool. So let's see. We'll get back into the slideshow. That's sort of what our interface looks like. We will be also introducing this sort of interface into, or trying to inject AI in more parts of our application. So rather than just in that interface, we'll let you sort of start from within existing dashboards. You can just kind of add stuff using that same sort of interface in this little sidebar. We'll give you some suggestions. And then the thing that I'm really excited about is we're going to start to give you, as the admins or as the owners of your BI tool or of Sigma, a lot of insights into how AI is being used across your organization, across your users. So we'll show you how much they're using the natural language, what questions are successful, which ones are not successful. For the ones that aren't successful, we'll tell you the data source that it tried to use. We'll prompt you to go maybe add another description there or something to help make the AI a bit more precise next time around. And we'll also tell you what types of questions your users are asking too. So are they asking about your customers or your product or HR, whatever the case is. So I think if you're like a chief data officer, what you really care about is, on top of security and all that other important stuff, is like how effectively is data being used throughout my organization. I've bought all these tools, I've set up all these pipelines, I have all this infrastructure. is it really delivering the value to my end users that I want it to be delivering? And I think interfaces like this actually help give some really nice feedback there. They can understand if people are really using AI in the right way, if people are getting their questions answered correctly, and what types of questions they're asking, what data sources they're accessing as well. So hopefully this kind of like peels or pulls the veil back a little bit for the admins, for your champions or owners of these tools, and really gives them insight into how stuff is being used. And again, this is just like we're very much in this journey right now. We're going to be learning a ton as we continue to evolve and get feedback from a few hundreds of customers using this beta feature right now. If any of you guys are Sigma customers, you're welcome to use it. And we look forward to collecting feedback and just making this better and better, and hopefully seeing what other kinds of cool interfaces the industry comes up with to help do better analytics with AI.